All right, this is tutorial number 2, where we're going to discuss monitor mixes. Over on the right-hand side here is your master fader for all the different outputs. There is a common mute. If you mute that, it mutes your mains. A balance control. A compressor. A parametric equalizer. And a 31-band equalizer. You can use one or the other or both. Clicking on the very top, again, looks daunting, but it's just all the information about the main left-right master fader outputs. Does this fader belong to a VCA, or some people call them DCA? No, they're not on. How about a mute? No, it is not assigned to any mutes. Now, what channels are going to this left-right fader? Right now, all of them are. If we did not want the bass guitar to go to mains, all we would do is click that. So that's basically an overview, but you can also use that to assign or unassign specific channels from going to the mains. Let's go back to our main screen, the center button up here. Now let's turn up Tiffany in her monitor mix. We tap on the LR because we don't want to look at the left-right main mix anymore. We want to look at Tiffany's mix, which is number 2. Click on 2. Now we have Tiffany's mix. These are all the channels that could be turned up in Tiffany's mix. And you can see she's turned up right there next to Charles. If she wanted more volume, all we'd have to do is raise her up a little bit, watching her, and then she gives the thumbs up and goes, yep, that's great. This is the master for her monitor mix. That's the equalizer setting. Everything's the same. We're going to put that back down. Over here on these mix outputs is another button. You'll hear me say that a lot. Another button. Pre-fader. We click on that, and we get some options here. Pre-DSP, meaning digital signal processing. Pre meaning before. If we were to select that, it's asking us, do you want to change the source to pre-DSP? No. What that means, if we would have chose that, is that all the equalizer settings and all the compressor settings and gate settings, digital signal processing, would not be effective in her monitor mix in 2. Pre-fader simply means that we can raise and lower these volumes, but the volume here in her mix does not rely on the fader positions of the main left-right mix for the audience. Commonly, pre-fade is what you want for monitor mixes. We could choose post-fader. If we did, then we still have control over what she hears, but whenever we make a change to the volume of her vocal for the audience, her monitor is going to be reflected with that change, and that's not necessarily a good thing. The last option is use left-right mute. That's checked, which means if I mute her channel in the main mix, let's go back there, left-right. If I mute her channel, which it's muted right now, that means her monitor mix is also muted for her vocal mic. If we were to uncheck that, disable use left-right mute, yes. What that means now is you'll notice the mute buttons don't say mute anymore. Now they say aux mute. That means that Tiffany's monitor mix has mute buttons that do not affect the mains or anybody else's. They're convenient mute buttons for her mix. It's a very convenient thing. It allows her to quickly scroll over here and say, wow, the saxophone is really too loud. Instead of lowering it and taking time to lower it, she could just tap the mute button. That's not going to mute the saxophone for the mains. So that's the options in the monitor mixes. Let's go back to use left, right, mute. That's what I use for her monitor mix because she does not use an iPad or an iPhone to control her own mix. She is on a monitor speaker, and so I handle all of that for her. Now let's move on to another mix. That was Tiffany's vocal mix. Let's look at the bass player's mix. This is a stereo mix. You'll notice, let me go back. You'll notice only 1 meter there. That's because it's a mono output. Let's go to the bass, and he uses in-ear monitors, and he uses a stereo mix. That's why his meter has 2 meters. These are all his levels. You'll also notice that since his is a stereo mix, we now have the pan sliders up there for his mix. That allows him to pan things in his earbuds wherever he wants, completely independent from what I do for the audience. Now let's look at this pre-fader button again, where these options are. You'll notice there's one more. Use left, right pan is not checked, meaning these pan settings in his mix are for him to use however he wants. If I were to use left, right pan, these are the pan settings for the main left, right. Now, this brings up an interesting point. Do we want him to be messing with these pans? No, we don't. Because if he pans a trumpet all the way in his left ear, that's going to put the trumpet only on the left side of the mains for the audience. So what we would do is when we set up his iPad for his monitor mix, we only allow him to use his mix, and then we lock him out of certain features. One of them would be processing, gain, all those other things. We can go over that in another video, and that can be found in the Access Limits tab. Looks complicated. It really isn't. Let's move on to the third tutorial, where I will explain all about view groups.